Hi everyone in English 1301. I just wanted to provide you with a video with some information about our final paper or our final discussion post portfolio. So what I'm going to do is walk us through not only how this information appears in our syllabus and the schedule, but also kind of walk through the rubric and the expectations that will be posted to D2L. So as usual, if you have any questions, you're always free to post in the Q&A discussion post area or to email me directly or meet with me during our office hours, okay? So first I'm going to pull up our syllabus. So if you want to grab yours or pull yours up on the screen, that might offer a little bit of clarity to what you're seeing now. So I'm looking at week 5 in our syllabus, and you'll notice that on Wednesday, the 1st of July, your paper topic portfolio is going to be due for peer reviewing. I'm going to go through and assign you to groups in the discussion area, so you'll just kind of find your discussion area with your name and your group. You will post that portfolio there, and then you'll have time until Friday, between Wednesday and Friday, to read, edit, provide feedback to one another in your discussion group for that work. So then it shows here that by Friday you should post that review information to one another, and I'll have more specific instructions when this comes around, but I just want you to kind of keep in mind our timeline, that this is in week 5, right? After the posting on Wednesday and then you sharing your review and feedback by Friday, then your final paper topic portfolio is going to be due on Sunday, July 5th. Okay, so you have time to go through between Friday and Sunday and offer your final revisions, your final updates, your final additions, and then submit that work to the assignments area of D2L. And for that week, in that weekly video, there will be more information surely, but I just want you to kind of keep the time frame in mind, so that then we're going to go over the actual rubric and guidelines. So keep these things in mind. So this is posted to D2L, and this is what most rubrics kind of look like. On the left-hand side, I've included the general criteria, and then we have the different columns that have the expectations. What I usually tell students is that we should really be sticking to these two columns, right? The advanced, which is awesome, or the meet expectations, which is nice, right? Those are two columns that show that you've done the work and you've paid attention to the guidelines and requirements. We should really not be striving for meet some expectations or does not meet expectations, but those are present just because I want you to have a visual of, where you want to be and where you want to avoid being, right? So I want you to imagine, when I go to grade your assignments, that I have a printed version of this in front of me and I'm just circling, right? So if I'm circling in mostly the advanced areas and then maybe some of the meets expectations, then that really equates to a higher grade, right? You're in the A range. If I'm mostly circling in kind of the meets expectations, but maybe one over here in advanced, but then a lot of meets some expectations, then that's where you're kind of getting into the B high C range, right? So I just want you to have that visual in mind as you think about completing this work. So we have thesis and focus, and if we're sticking into the advanced column, each entry that you choose is going to include some sort of thesis statement. And we'll talk more about thesis statements as we work through this summer session. But you're giving us a kind of direction for that particular entry in that post. And your readers, your audience, right, can kind of get a sense of that. So I always talk about thesis statements in terms of, if somebody walked up to you off the street and asked you, hey, what's this discussion post about? That thesis statement really sums everything up. Okay, effectiveness of content. Your content is all clearly connected to your thesis. There's no meandering going on, and there is content that makes those ideas meaningful and clear, right? And that moves right into organization. You have those clear ideas. There are transitions between them. In those paragraphs, the transitions are not abrupt or not present at all. So a lot of times I have students who worry about organization, and an easy trick to that is to just make sure that every paragraph in some way is coming back to your thesis statement. That means your ideas will stay organized, okay? Again, more about that down the line. We're jumping ahead quite a few weeks, right, to kind of look at these expectations, but I want you to know up front what we're doing, okay? One big thing about this assignment is that we will have to include sources and documentation, right? We need to work into MLA guidelines, which we'll go through in the upcoming weeks. But for each of those entries, you need to use sources to support your ideas, okay? So your sources are included in those entries, and then those sources are also appearing in a works cited page at the end, following MLA guidelines, right? I'm going to push you to use quotes, right? You can always paraphrase when it comes to academic writing, but I think the easiest thing to do is to just use those quotes so that there's no confusion about whose ideas those are. We want to give credit to the people whose ideas those are in the articles that we'll use. And so again, we'll learn some of this as we go through the next couple of weeks. Grammar, punctuation, spelling, these are not the focus of this class, right? Our class is about the composition, is about effectively communicating, right? So this is not a strict grammar, spelling, punctuation class. I'm not going to focus solely on that. The only time those become kind of a problem is that if the submission that I'm looking at, it's hard to follow ideas because there are so many grammar errors or spelling or, something that comes up that's just on a mechanical level. So you just want to make sure that everything, is kind of peer reviewed, checked. You can always, take some time to work through some of your writing with Miss Reyes, right? She is our tutor for the course. So typically I say grammar, punctuation, spelling, that should be an easy grade, right? Because through all the different steps that we take for this assignment, we should not have those issues remaining in the final version, okay? And then for each of your entries that you go back to, you need to include an abstract paragraph, which essentially is you going back, kind of looking at, what steps did you take to revise your ideas? What step did you take to maybe add research if that was necessary? Also, kind of rethinking the content, right? You wrote this, a couple weeks back. Are you thinking differently about what you originally posted? Are you having to do a lot of revising in order to really reconceptualize some of these ideas? So an abstract paragraph just kind of gives your audience that kind of context, which can be really helpful. We're not just reading entry after entry without getting your insights about the experience. You'll want those abstracts to be italicized just so that it shows a distinction between your post, right, that you reworked, and then the way that you've gone back and rethought about that in the abstract, okay? Again, more of this will become clear as we work through the next couple of weeks, okay? So that essentially is our rubric. So I want you to always keep this in mind as you work through this assignment. And then if you scroll down the second page, it's just giving us a little bit more background, right? So our goal for this is to go back to our paper discussion posts, our paper topic discussion posts from weeks 2, 3, and 4. Once we really get into our topic, which will be food this semester, you're going to revise, edit, and then peer review those discussion posts and submit them as a single document, right? And you'll need to submit it in Word format, which is either .doc or .docx, or in PDF format. This is pretty much a given, but if you are working with a Mac or a MacBook, I don't want you to submit in Pages because I can't, D2L will not open it for me to see it. So make sure, please, that you're submitting it in the right format, okay? After you peer review it and receive feedback from one another, you're going to revise, edit, and then submit that final document in the assignments area of D2L, okay? So I've put here, a lot of the time and effort is going to be in revision. You put the time and effort into the original posts, but then you have to go back to them and a lot of times rework them, add that research, really think about your ideas in different ways after putting some time between those original submissions. I want you to note that in academic spaces, taking work from previously in the semester and resubmitting it is considered plagiarism. I know it's crazy that you can plagiarize yourself, but it's true. Or taking work from one class and passing it off in another class, that is also considered plagiarism, but I'm giving you permission to do so. I'm giving you permission to go back to that work and revise it for that final paper portfolio submission, okay? Part of this is that revision and peer reviewing process. This is a habit I want you to form for all your writing in the future, right? We want to share our work with other people to get fresh eyes on our work, as well as taking the time to revise, what we've written originally. When we miss those steps, oftentimes what we submit contains errors or contains information that is hard for readers to follow, because what I write and what I understand may not be easy to follow for another reader, right? We think in very particular ways and we then write in those ways, which don't always translate for other people to read and understand. So that peer review process becomes really important. And I've put here, I know people in different jobs and in different fields, and they will do this even with emails. Before they send out an email to, multiple people, they will revise it. They'll take the time to come back to it. They'll send it to other people and say, hey, can you just give this a quick once over and see if I've included any grammar, spelling, any errors, if you understand my ideas. So this is one of those things where I just want you to form the habit now and understand that it can be very meaningful. The work that you produce and submit after going through these steps will be far better than those original, submissions if you didn't go through any of these steps, okay? So just something to keep in mind. The criteria are here, right? You need to have 3 discussion post entries from our previous weeks. Each entry needs to be at least 3 paragraphs in length. Some of you may end up with more, and that's okay. I don't want it to be too much more than that. I want us to really learn to put our ideas into a specific space, right? And you need to utilize sources from our reading. So you won't have to go outside of our class to do the research unless you really want to, but you need to use at least 2 different sources from the articles that we'll address this semester. And that's just kind of helping us use research, which you'll do in other academic writing. We want to ethically research and utilize other people's ideas to support our own. That's what academic writing essentially requires, and we want to get kind of comfortable with that. Okay, each entry should include an abstract paragraph, right? And that comes before your revised discussion post. This is just going to give the audience, again, some context, right? What happened between you originally writing it and you revising it? Did you develop anything new in the peer review process? So I want you to think about the actual process of writing it, but also think back to your ideas. What originally made you think of this topic? What, has anything changed in the way you think about this topic, right? In addition to the just writing part of it, okay? Your portfolio needs to follow MLA guidelines. So that's including a heading, a header, a title, not a title page. We'll talk about some of these more specifically in the future. 12-point font, Times New Roman, and include that works cited at the end. Okay, the works cited page should appear at the very end of the portfolio, just as if this were a research paper. There's a works cited page that stands out on its own, but it's included as part of the document. I've included the Purdue Online Writing Lab website here, just so in a pinch you know where to go to find some examples and information about not only using research but creating that works cited page. The portfolio should be submitted in D2L in the assignments area by the due date and time, and in these formats, right? I really want you to consider taking advantage of the fact that Ms. Reyes is the tutor in our course area, and set up a time to meet and talk and work through your ideas with her. She knows what she's talking about. She knows what the course is requiring, right? But you need to make sure that you do this ahead of time, because Ms. Reyes is working as a tutor for all North Harris students, not just those in our class. So her time is valuable, and she's going to be very busy at certain points. So make time ahead to schedule that important, okay? Or to schedule that appointment. At the bottom, this is just something from our syllabus to show you how the grade is broken down. Overall, this is going to be 300 points, right, in our grade. The paper discussion posts themselves, that's 150 points, those original submissions, okay? And then the peer review process and your assigned groups, that's 50 points. That's a pretty hefty grade, so you want to make sure you're keeping that in mind and staying on schedule. And then once you go through peer review, edit, finalize, you'll submit to D2L for me to look at, and that's 100 points, okay? So it's a big grade, but it's broken down in different ways, okay? I've kind of rushed through all of this, but I want you to just kind of get my general take on this, and if you have any more specific questions, there's always the Q&A area, or you can reach out to me via email or during office hours, but definitely take some more time to look through these requirements, just to make sure, one, if you see any errors that I've included in the document, but also to see if you have any questions that you want to address now. ahead of time, right? I don't want you to think about these things at the very last minute, but again, as we go through the different weeks, we're going to build and you will have more information to help you make some of these decisions and revisions, okay? All right, that is our paper portfolio. Hang in there. We're only at the start, but man, it's going to go quickly. All right, good luck.